very topic that has come out of probably months and months of conversations that Deborah and Vinay and others have had with the Arts Commission around the fees that are currently spent in downtown, mostly office buildings. So probably a couple years ago I was walking through an office building and I noticed an amazing piece of art, and I asked questions about how it got funded, and I discovered that our city actually requires large developers, owners of big buildings, as they're being built, to devote 1% of the construction costs of a big building to on-site arts. And as you can imagine, this is often a lot of money. And this money is usually used to purchase a very expensive, incredible piece of art that sits in the middle of a private lobby so that many of us actually don't have an opportunity to go see it. And so there were a lot of folks, I think a number of folks in this room, who thought, well, why don't we think about trying to access these resources in different ways. And so I introduced a piece of legislation today that is also being sponsored by Mayoral that would give developers and builders the opportunity to decide whether they wanted to take that 1% of money and provide it to either off-site art or to provide it to community-based organizations that are doing capital improvements. It's the choice of the developer or the owner of these buildings. It's estimated that over the next 10 years, this 1% fee could generate literally tens of millions of dollars. So for example, if you know about the Transbay Terminal project, there's a $3.3 to $4 billion development plan that is underway that would generate $30 to $40 million for the arts. If you had a single $100 million development, which is say 200 units of housing or an office building, that could generate $1 million. And what we're also going to allow is for the money to be used not just in the downtown area, but anywhere close to sort of this downtown corridor in the mid-market area, Tenderloin area, etc. And it is my hope that some of this money, assuming this legislation passed, will be freed up to support organizations and artists that are local, so that it's not just about that one magnificent piece of art in the middle of that financial district building, and it's about really pushing and cultivating artistry in the area. I want to also address another aspect of Deborah's question around the America's Cup. I was very proud to be a strong sponsor of the America's Cup along with my colleague Russ McCramey and with our former mayor. And one of the things that is an obvious benefit of that project is it's going to bring in $1 billion plus into San Francisco. And this is money that hopefully is going to go not just to hotels and to bars and restaurants, but to local artists. And I am a believer that when it comes to public projects, there's a different requirement that requires us to place 2% of these fees into public art. And I think that fee, that requirement, should apply to major construction projects related to the America's Cup. We have an opportunity with the America's Cup not only to rebuild our waterfront, to rebuild transit along the waterfront, but to rebuild how that part of town interacts with artists. And I think not only should we consider the use of that money there, but I think we need to consider programming arts in a very significant way into the America's Cup experience. And in fact, actually, I think at Deborah's suggestion, I asked that very question of the America's Cup organizers at a Board of Supervisors hearing just a couple of weeks ago. We were told that they are thinking about programming, but I think it's up to us on the board and for all of us in the community to push them on what this is going to mean, to make sure that there are going to be outdoor music and live performances, to make sure that there will be at least temporary public art installations. I am a big fan, when the day is beautiful, of having outdoor galleries. If you go to great cities like Sydney, you'll just have blocks and blocks of artists displaying their works near places where you literally will have, when the America's Cup comes, you'll literally have 250,000 people coming to San Francisco a day. And this is a huge boon and opportunity for all of us in this room to enjoy. And again, it's not just about the artists, but it's also about cultivating the community that is coming to what I think of as the most beautiful city in the world, the city of San Francisco. A city with the most beautiful bay in the world, and there's no reason why we should not integrate an artistic experience as part of that, so that tourists will never forget the experience and will buy our art and spend a lot of money.
a follow-up question?
Sure. So just other ideas for revenue. What about how you want to restructure the hotel tax or use the hotel tax to be able to fund arts?
Yeah, as I think many folks here know, our hotel tax has essentially been gutted in recent years as monies have been taken away from arts programs to other general fund uses. And I know that both John and I actually have a number of ideas in what we need to do to really shore up our revenues so that we're not necessarily robbing from Peter to pay Paul. A couple of ideas that I think I heard Bevan and Phil talk about. I have for years been a proponent of reforming our city's business tax. Right now, only 10% of all businesses in San Francisco pay this tax, and it's a tax that penalizes the creation of jobs. And so from my perspective, and I've been talking about this ever since I ran a small business here in San Francisco, I think we need to reform that tax and broaden the tax base so that we can ask all of our businesses that benefit from San Francisco to help pay just a little bit to make sure that we're all here. I also have been a very strong advocate for increasing the vehicle license fee back to the rates at which we used to pay the vehicle license fee before Governor Schwarzenegger gutted that fee in 2003. Californians used to pay a 2% fee for your vehicle for 50 years, and when Arnold Schwarzenegger came in, he blew a $6 billion a year hole in the state budget, which resulted in a $50 million plus hole in our local budget. Think of what that could do to us here locally. We have a state senator, Mark Leno, who's working to push legislation to allow us locally to consider fees like that, but we have to be creative in how we find revenues in these tough times, and we have to make sure that it is not our most vulnerable, and it's not the folks who are building vision for San Francisco that are shouldering the responsibility of budget cuts.
Thank you. Supervisor Avalos, to repeat the question, what steps would you take to increase and secure funding for the arts, including funding for arts-based development? Would you support increasing and expanding the arts development impact fee on new large developments to fund art spaces and public art programming? And also, will you support an arts component of the America's Cup? Our commitment and our belief is that it is a requirement as a public development that those projects pay a 2% arts mitigation fee. So you have 5 minutes, follow-up of one, and then a...
Great, thank you. So the arts are really important to me, so I would be, in the past several years I've funded many arts programming through the city budget, and the first year was 2006. Based on the arts task force recommendations, had funded our cultural equity centers as well as our cultural equity grants. Cultural centers and cultural equity grants, and for me it was pretty devastating looking at how the hotel tax had been shifted, the use of the hotel tax. The 14%, hotel tax is 14%, had been shifted from 8% that was going towards arts and the Convention and Visitors Bureau to 6%. And that shift meant that a lot of organizations and artists were not getting the support that they truly needed to be able to do their work. And so based on the task force recommendations, was able to put a little money back in the budget. It was a significant amount. I believe it was $800,000 to $1 million that went in that year. And I was very proud of doing that. And that's just a drop in the bucket, though, of what the arts programming really, really needs. My work at City Hall has been chiefly on the city budget. The first day I got there was looking at how we could grow our budget pie, make it bigger, our revenue. And so I looked at the gross receipts tax. One of the first things I looked at was how we could move from a payroll tax to a gross receipts tax and have that become revenue generating. And I actually worked with David Chiu. I met David Chiu while working on that project years ago. We didn't quite get to the end of the line because it got shoved out of the way by other priorities. Last year I worked with unions, neighborhood leaders, and organizations to put a temporary 2% increase to the hotel tax on the ballot. That was going to go towards neighborhood services, but there were allocations that are specific to how the hotel tax should be used. It was all going to be in compliance with the hotel tax. We didn't win, and it was unfortunate. We actually had Gavin Newsom had put up a competing measure. But I think in that competing measure that was specific to trying to close the loophole on online travel companies is the answer to get more significant online funding. Right now, the online travel companies like Expedia and Kayak are not paying into the hotel tax. They're in litigation right now. So once we win that litigation, which hopefully will happen the next year, I've actually introduced a request for legislation that we would move forward and dedicate that funding, about $15 million a year, towards parks and for neighborhood arts as well. And to me, that would be a significant boon, but not enough. Then we're looking at our impact fees for construction, the 1% impact fee. I'd like to see that increase, and I support President Chiu's efforts around that as well. I think it makes a lot of sense. We also need to make sure that we are following the letter of the law on Admin Code 3.19, which is the 2% use of our development fees. The PUC actually I've been talking with the PUC about how we can use those funds, and they're looking more closely at how they can support neighborhood artists and working closely with city supervisors to make sure that money is programmed to support neighborhood arts. They actually they supported the Buddha that was outside on Civic Center. I love looking at the Buddha, but that wasn't necessarily supporting the neighborhood artists that really needed. I love the Buddha. And how do you like my Buddha? That's from Kankisi, I think. So I want to make sure that we can actually use Admin Code 3.19 to really support neighborhood artists and make that go forward. America's Cup, we have over $1 billion coming in to San Francisco. We need to make sure that every development dollar that comes in, if we're building infrastructure, that we're going to be following that 2%. But also how we can actually, America's Cup is going to be an event that's going to happen during the day. I don't think you sail at night. It might be kind of dangerous, especially with catamarans flipping over. So at night, what are people going to do? People are coming to San Francisco. How can we couple the great increase of people visiting San Francisco with activities that are going to happen at night? There's been talk about having an International Arts Festival to come with America's Cup. I think that's good, but we need to be making sure that we're supporting our local artists as well. So I want to make sure that we can use the revenue that's coming in to help really stimulate that economy, to help bring in more tourists, and help really to support the folks who are really making San Francisco the dynamic cultural city that really is.
Do you have a follow-up question for the supervisor?
One question we were all asked in our questionnaire, and I'm curious to know what John thinks, is this topic around the San Francisco Arts Commission and grants for the art, and whether we should combine them, because I have a feeling many of us probably think we should, or do something like that, and I'm just curious your perspective on it.
I believe that we should combine them. I want to make sure that we can have a unified vision for our arts programming in the city and how arts are funded in the city. And I think task force recommendations speak very clearly that we have a fragmented system. There's a lot of redundancy, and that we could actually vastly improve what we can do as a city by uniting those two departments together. Also combining that with, I would believe, the Film Commission as well. I want to be able to sponsor great films in San Francisco. How about doing a remake of Vertigo for the 21st century? I think you can actually go to a lot of the same places that are still around in that movie, and you can show off what a great city that San Francisco is. You can stimulate a lot of great tourism to come to this city, and it'll be a lot of fun. And I think having a group of folks, ideas to come forward to look at how we can really turn our great creativity into new projects and reinvent this city as something new would be excellent to do by working at combining these departments together. I actually also like the idea of looking at our parks programming as well, how our parks will be integrated into that system. I live right next to McLaren Park. We have the Jerry Garcia Amphitheater. That amphitheater used to be an amphitheater that used to have all the incredible bands from the 60s. I think Jimi Hendrix played there at one point. Has incredible sound. Nothing happens there. There should be a series that goes on there. Maybe a mini series at Stern Grove. We can have something at McLaren Park. What we have is Jerry Day, which is going to happen in a couple days. It's actually a pretty good event, but we can do so much more there. So how can we use our public space, our parks, our civic center plazas, our places all over the city to be able to attract and create series of arts as well? And I think if we're going to be able to take away the redundancies and make more efficient our arts programming through combining our departments, we're going to have more money freed up to be able to do these types of events.
That's great. Those are our prepared questions, and now we're going to